I'm your host, Elisa Metcalf. Books in the World is produced by the Cape Cod Writers Center and the Cape Media Center. The Writers Center was established over 6 decades ago and sponsors a 4-day writers' conference every summer on Cape Cod. The goal of Books in the World is to show how writers, illustrators, publishers, editors, and others in the literary field play their roles in the world of books and other communication media. This show has been broadcast continuously since 1978, making it the longest-running program of its kind in the United States. Today, we are delighted to welcome Nicole Barrell, author of The Sham.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. So it is a suspense, and it's set in South Boston, half South Boston, and then half in a fictional town on the Cape called Marshside, and which is a fictionalized version of like Dennis, Brewster, Harwich, because I grew up in Harwich. Mm-hmm. So, and it's about 2 roommates and kind of a random roommate pairing through Craigslist, and the kind of premise is that you don't know which one. One of them is seemingly the nefarious one, the other one, but then the other one has secrets too. So it's kind of like seeing how that plays out, like a cat and mouse kind of situation in their apartment in South Boston.
Yeah, the characters were really fun and compelling. So it falls under the thriller genre, this book. So what what's the criteria for a thriller?
So it's actually a sub-genre within thriller is like suspense, which is confusing because you're like, oh, they're the same thing. But suspense is more, especially domestic suspense. You would think like husband and wife in a house, but it can be just close living quarters. And so this falls under like domestic suspense, and then maybe psychological thriller as well. But because it's like follows people in like a close knit setting, it's kind of like more domestic suspense. Right. And I guess that's how you would categorize it. I don't know.
So the main character, Margot Sharp.
Yes.
Margot. AKA, right, so we find, yes, her name is Margot Sharp.
Yes, which has been changed.
Right. So when we meet her, she's having some financial issues.
Yes.
So she's living in South Boston.
Yes.
And we don't know a whole lot about her,
right,
except that, she has a job.
Yes, she works in the city. She's pretty reclusive. She doesn't have many friends. She's in her 20s, early 20s, and has been living on her own for a while. She does have an aunt who she's very close with, but it teases out a little bit in the beginning. But essentially, she's an orphan. Like, her parents have died. She alludes to it having been, a violent or something dark death, and so they kind of were horrible at finances, so she was kind of inherited their, so it's not like she had a windfall or anything like that. So she needs a roommate pretty badly, and so she kind of gets these freakish individuals who come and try and interview and tour the place, and then she meets Lucy Summers. Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And then all hell breaks loose.
Yes.
So tell us a little about Lucy. What's her deal?
So Lucy, the way she presents herself at first is very, like amenable and, she is like a lot of, she's, this place is so nice. And
tells her what she wants to hear.
I'm a teacher,
right?
And I just, tell her what she wants to hear. And just seems very innocent and sweet, and if not a little bit strange, like, but just in Margot's eyes, it's like, as long as you don't bother me and dig into like what I'm all about, you're fine.
But she's very closed off, Margot. She really does not want a roommate at all.
Right, doesn't want one at all. And a draw with Lucy is that she claims, I go home every weekend. I'm not a social person. I'm not going to, don't expect me to want to hang out with you a lot. And Margaret's like, perfect. We are just live separate lives. And that's not how it turns out. Lucy is like up her butt. Like, I don't know, like suddenly, like as it goes on and they've been living together a while, Lucy just.
It doesn't take very long. And then it seems like we realize that Lucy is snooping around.
Yes.
And just some really odd types of behaviors.
Something's not right. Yeah.
No, but then more like kind of rude behaviors where she's like walks into her room become almost downright like aggressive
Yes.
at points
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
where this behavior seems to escalate.
Yes, it escalates.
And
for
then
sure.
Next thing we know, I mean, everywhere Margot turns,
Yep.
Lucy's there.
Yes. Yeah. And there's this kind of stalking situation that Margot's involved in, that Lucy kind of is the interloper in that. So there's a whole other kind of side thing with this this guy Brad that we don't really know the connection between Margot and him until later on, but that she is like my boyfriend Brad, but there's something
which
strange
we don't believe
and off.
because she's so reclusive
Yes.
anyway. That is she really have this boyfriend,
right.
or has she just kind of fabricated this guy so she can be socially acceptable
right.
to friends? But
and Lucy picks right up on that, and then that's something that puts Margot back on her heels so it's like this, again, kind of a cat and mouse, I caught you in a lie, and then I catch you in a lie, and it keeps going.
Yeah, I mean the story, it's really fast paced and a lot of tension. There's a lot of very tense.
Yes, I mean I was in earlier drafts, and I had less tension and I had more humor because I found it hilarious. Because
it's still hilarious.
Yeah, because I think so too. But I had gotten feedback from agents and such that if it's going to be a thriller, the genre expectation is it's got a darker tone. So I kind of had to darken it up a little bit. With earlier drafts, it was a little bit more I want to say outlandish, but just humor. And I tried to keep some of that in there for them.
Well, yeah, I mean they're these two young women and they can get kind of snarky with each other, which I'm sure must be really fun to write.
Yes.
They're really kind of
yeah. And I'm so interested in people who just are kind of hypocritical, and they have rules for themselves but not others, and I don't know. So, but it was born out of the fact that I lived in Southie with kind of random roommate situation when I was in my early 20s, and we had a revolving door, and it was this Southie cop with no pinky who was our he was our landlord, and he was lovely, but he just thought we were wild women, because we were just, and it was a very rare month-to-month situation. You didn't have a lease. Mm-hmm. So in 30 days, if you wanted to leave, you could just give your notice, and to whom? No one. He was hands off. He'd come by sometimes in his uniform and be like, "Everything okay? I'm going to redo the floors, or get your stuff out of here." So it wasn't he would just kind of pop in and out. St. Patty's Day though, he making sure we didn't throw too large of parties. But he. There's a character Owen in it that is sort of loosely I always thought of he was our protector a little bit, and there's a character in the book that was a bit of a protector.
Other than Margot's aunt, who isn't around. I mean, she lives on the Cape and they're in Boston, but the Owen character is a bit of an ally for her. So she has, when things really start going south and getting crazy, where she's being gaslit and starts to think that maybe she's losing her mind about, because this Lucy really starts messing with her big time.
Yes.
So at least there's somebody in her life, and his big dog.
Yes, of course, have to have a dog in it.
Of course, yeah. So it toggles back and forth between Margot's point of view and Lucy's point of view. Mm-hmm. Who was more fun to write?
Lucy.
You like the Mean Girls,
but that was a late addition. I didn't have her point of view, her perspective, and it was only Margot. And then it was a late in the I mean, this took years, which we'll probably talk about, but later in the draft process, I was well, maybe I should just try to see what Lucy's voice would sound like. Mm-hmm. But I kept it in the third person, whereas Margot's is in the first. And I loved writing in the third person, especially after you're just immersed in this one person, and they're I, me,
it's
me,
limiting.
me.
It's limiting.
And it is. And so the third person, you give a little distance, and I always thought that was perfect for Lucy, because you get I wouldn't say sympathetic, but you start to see like the
Right.
like roots of why she is who she is and what's happened to her. So
Yeah, and that
yeah.
was helpful too. That as it unfolds, yeah, and about that too. So over time, as the book progresses, we learn little bits about Margot's past,
Yeah.
and much like her present, it's
Mm-hmm.
fraught with a lot of conflict and tension.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you decide how much to reveal and at what point?
Again, revision. I mean, there were times when I think I was making it too obvious, and then I'd have to go back to the drawing board, and then you have to change everything.
Right.
So suspense is hard in that regard. Just making those being like, I think the one word in my mind as I'm like writing and when I'm editing is restraint. Restrain yourself, because everybody, you want to just like get it out there and explain, and you don't like want to be too evasive and dark because you don't want to lose people. So it was really, really hard, and I struggle a lot with beginnings, especially with thrillers. The pressure is that like you got to hook them, the first 5-10 pages, and so for me, like I want to set the stage first, but you just have that constant pressure, like what's tension versus what's like an info dump, and what's like a overwrought beginning. So just trying to find that balance is really hard.
Just it seems like Margot's backstory. I mean, there's a whole arc to
Yeah.
that story as well,
Yeah.
which is fully fleshed out and
Yeah.
developed too.
Well, that was earlier drafts. That was the forefront, was her past, because that's what I was most interested in. And thematically, I really like the guilt and shame and redemption story, like arc. I guess like you feel horrible about something that you've done in the past, and it shapes you, and then you move through life, and then you can hopefully somehow crawl out of that and like look back and have the wherewithal to know like it wasn't your fault, or like all that stuff. So I loved the backstory stuff, but it was like
great.
kind of crowded like the present day narrative. So I had to peel that back. I had to cut a lot of things I didn't want to cut, but I did, and I think it served the story better.
Yeah, it was good. It was good. And then, so I was going to ask you: are the characters? Are they, because you grew up in these areas between Boston and Marseille?
Oh yeah.
Are they totally fictional? Or
The characters for sure. I would get in a lot of trouble.
not
Yeah, no,
not based on
the women, like the
anybody
young women, like in our 20s when we lived together, are still my friends to this day. So it's like not any of us, but it was always that potential, like who are we gonna get, And like even before I got there, I think they had a couple strange ones that had come through, but I didn't personally like really experience any of that. I just kind of years on, I was like, what would have that have been like if we just pulled in a girl and like she was just off her rocker and just so it always kind of
a
intrigued
little
me.
single white female situation,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. So, which parts of the book were easiest for you to write, and which were the hardest?
Again, the beginning, I probably redid the beginning time after time
Is
after
that
time.
kind of a common, like, where to start?
Yeah,
right?
where to start, getting to the meat of it, but and stop, dragging your heels and trying to be cutesy or like, just trying too hard. So that was a learning process. But once I can get into it, and I think, and I'll hopefully get better at this the more I write and, in future books, but just like, I think once it picks up, it picks up. And I can feel that as I'm writing. I'm like, okay, I'm like this is fast, this is good. But getting there is hard, while providing enough information for people to get what's going on.
Right. So you are Harwich native, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
You grew up?
I grew up in
born and
Harwich.
raised there?
Yes. Yep.
Went to school there, and then how? So, what were your interests growing up?
I mean, I was an athlete, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I grew up. My dad died when I was younger, so my mom raised us. Single mom. She was a teacher at the high school that I went to, and it was a small town, and I'm still like dear friends with most of the people that I grew up with. And my first house was in the Punkhorn. So the Punkhorn's actually named in it as one of the settings for the fictional town. But really it's in Brewster, Brewster and Harwich. So it's this set of woods that up until when I was 5, we lived like in the Punkhorn, in this tiny little house. And I just always, I don't know, and I had friends that lived like far on the other side, kind of like almost in Dennis, and we would like walk the fire roads and stuff like that. So I love the Punkhorn, and I just find it so, like, I'm writing something else, and it's like, that's the setting. I just love it. I don't know.
So I mean, it must be, easier to write places that you know.
Place is very rooted in reality. Yeah.
I felt like I could see that when we got to her backstory about, when she was on the Cape and stuff, I did feel like I could really see the houses and the neighborhood and everything.
Yeah, that's easy to write for me.
Personal. And then you went to UMass?
Went to UMass Amherst.
And got a BA in journalism,
I did.
Is that correct? So at what point did you decide?
To be a fiction writer?
Well, I mean, journalism wouldn't, necessarily. I mean, was your goal to work for a newspaper or something like that?
I didn't know what I wanted, to be honest with you. I like to write, and that was what I was strongest at. Wasn't really good at anything else.
Were you writing before,
I wrote for article. It was journalism in high school, journalism in college. Just seemed like it would follow. I really loved my courses. I loved writing for the Collegian, which was the UMass paper. But as I was graduating, it was clear that, newspapers were kind of not the most lucrative path. And because I didn't grow up with money, and then I didn't have so
you decided to be an author?
Well, no, that's always been on the side. But when I graduated, I wanted to, I was just more into the social. I was like, I want to move to Boston. I want to be with my friends, and I want to, whatever. And that's all I cared about. Whatever will support me to do that. And working at even the Globe as an intern or something would be so I wouldn't be able to afford Boston. So I took jobs that I kind of got into the marketing. For 10 years, I was in marketing, which was so random. I did e-commerce, I did events marketing, I did web content management. I was for 10 years, different places.
And that was after because you got a master's.
So that was in the middle, yeah. In the middle, I kind of was I felt that pull.
In publishing and writing.
In publishing and writing, yeah.
So is that where you started to really focus more on fiction writing? Yeah,
pretty much, yeah. Because I had this pull and I had this yearning for more of a creative outlet, because my day jobs were just at a desk in front of a computer, no creative, not even an inkling of that. And it just always made me really sad and just dissatisfied. So I ended up just doing that, going to grad school, and I took some electives in memoir writing and fiction writing, and I did a fiction workshop, and that kind of kick-started it when I had the fiction workshop, because I got really good feedback from my professor, and I had been writing something, and I kind of used that as my samples when we did the class workshop, and got good feedback. So.
And The Sham is actually your second book. You have another book out called The Hollow,
right,
which I heard you wrote during lunch breaks.
Yes.
At your stint at Emerson.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So I was, so one of my, as I was
there's some dedication right there.
Yeah. So I went to Emerson College. I worked there full time in their marketing department, and I went to school at night in their publishing and writing program. And so then that, I didn't have kids yet, but they did have lunch breaks. I would just write that book. And then I didn't really mean for that to be anything. We did a project where we made it into an ebook, because that was part of my, I did a web development course, and it looked like a book. And then I was like, well, it's practically a book anyway. So I went through all the avenues, and then I self-published that one, but it was kind of more of a project. I didn't
Is it related to this book at all?
Did I put any weird little connections that would, I don't know. I mean, not really. No, it's, maybe there's a couple Easter eggs, but I don't, no, they're unrelated. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's pretty hard. I mean, I personally, I don't know if I could find, you sit down to your lunch and all these distractions around you.
Yeah.
I mean, that requires a great deal of focus.
Yeah, I'm good at that. I can drown things out. Mm-hmm. Thankfully.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have to. So.
Congratulations.
Thanks. I mean, it serves me now because I have even less time than I did before. So.
And then as a young adult, after all of this, working and trying to write and carve out all this time and graduate from college, you get a health
Oh yeah.
scare.
Yeah,
More than a scare.
Yeah, in 2016, so I was like a year out of my grad program, and my mom had stage 4 breast cancer. So I was
At that time? Wow.
So I moved from Boston with my new husband to help her out. But she was still living independently, but it was just kind of to be closer. So we moved to Harwich to just help her out. And while I was there, found a lump and had to go get tested. And I was like, are you effing kidding me? It was, so we were at the same time. And thankfully mine was caught early. So I went through treatment and I did all of that. And that's when, I had kind of an epiphany or just kind of smack upside my own head, where I was like, what are you doing with this work stuff? Like, you don't like working in marketing. You're not,
Right.
I was working for like a furniture company. I don't care about furniture. I'm like the least aesthetically like inclined person ever. I was doing their e-commerce. And I was like, what am I doing? So I went through treatment and I worked through treatment because I need to stay busy. And once that was through,
Was that
so it
cathartic too, to write during?
Yeah. And and that was another thing, the Hollow, the first book, was really like a good distraction. Just that was I didn't intend on doing anything with it, but once I got diagnosed and I had to go through treatment, and I was like, I need to think about something else that will keep me motivated, and so that was that. So, and I was, I knew from a publishing program that I could send that out to agents and try for it, but the rejection rate for anyone is really, really high. And I was like, I'm already bald and I'm already sad. I don't really want them to. I really want them to like get all these rejections. So that's why I went that route for that one. Yeah. So yeah, I got through that, and then I became. I just kind of was like, you know what? My mom was a teacher. I want to be able to talk about books and be around, have a more fulfilling career. And I switched to teaching, and now I teach English. I teach high school English. So it's such a total departure, but it was a really, really good move. So,
yes, it is. Yeah. And does that in any way influence your, story ideas for you or your writing?
The only way it would is like, I'm writing something new now, and there's a 15-year-old, and the way she speaks, I'm like, I hope I have an ear for the way they actually talk, and I know that I don't try not to get caught up with the different like things that they say that fall away in like 2 months. So I try not to like do trendy like dialogue.
Right, right. So now you teach full time.
Yeah.
And you have a young son.
Yeah, he's 3.
Is that correct? And you're still finding time to write.
Yeah, less and less, less and less. It's really, it's a struggle. And I just tell myself, it's just this time of my life, it's just hard. So in between school, when I get out of school, and daycare pickup, I will just sit in a parking lot and I'll write for like an hour, maybe, or half an hour, if that. Yeah, so that's my time.
It's inspirational.
Yeah.
And because you have this finished product too, as a result, and you're working on another book.
Yeah, I have 2 more. I have one that's like 60. Because in the summer I so hyper focused. I still put my son in daycare, which gives me a little guilt, but I'm like, it's the only time I have to continuously work on something. So, I just make the best use of my time as I can.
And does that come easy, that transition where you suddenly you have a big block of time and you can spend that sitting and writing? Good for you.
Yeah, it's just out of desperation, honestly.
Hey, whatever works. Yeah, whatever works.
Yeah.
So how was the publishing journey for you?
It was hard because this one I went.
Being so busy
route.
too, and trying to write, and now you're you're shopping this. You were shopping this book around to different places.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I made a lot of mistakes. I queried it, pitched it out to agents before it was ready. I thought it was ready, I really did, but it had some holes in it, some things that needed work. So I'd go back to the drawing board like 2 or 3 times, and I was like pregnant, and I was. The reason why I kind of rushed it was because I'm going to have a baby. I'm not going to have time to, to pitch to write all these queries and to send this out. So I got to do it now. So I rushed it. And so that was just a really big learning curve. And then thankfully I found a small publisher that they've been lovely, and they take like unsolicited, unagented manuscripts like 1 month out of the year or something. And I just was like, I had kind of exhausted all the suspense and thriller agents, again, like rookie mistake, with kind of this manuscript that hadn't been ready. And then once it was ready, I was like, well, I have no one else to send it to, but I don't want it to just like languish and die. So I sent it out to some small publishers, and they I got all these offers like within 1 week. So
great. That must have felt terrific.
Yeah, it was very gratifying because there was a long stretch of rejection before that.
Right.
Before
it's
that.
Woodhull Press.
Woodhull Press out of Connecticut, yeah.
And they've been good to work with.
Yeah, and the
Is
best
it more of a
thing,
collaborative experience?
Yeah, they've been so lovely, and they're really attentive, and they're small, so a lot of the marketing does fall to me, which I really do not have time for, but I need to get better. But they've been great, and the audiobook was the most fun thing. It was the best thing out of all of this.
Did you read for that?
No, but they let me have a say in the narrators, and they sold it to Penguin Random House for so that it was very high quality production and everything. And so the Lucy character, I'll send you a sample, but she is unhinged, and she sounds great. So that was really
terrific.
Fun. Yeah.
So as far as the future, you're just looking forward to the summer and whatever breaks you can get during school. And
really.
Terrific. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you so much.
You have a website where people can get information about you.
Yep.
And this book is available in all the normal places.
Right. Yeah.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much for being
Thanks
on
for
the
having
program,
me.
and best of luck with everything.
Oh, thanks, Lisa.
All
so
right.
Nice of you.
And thank you for watching Books in the World. If you have enjoyed this program and would like to see more like it, you can find links through our website at capecodwriterscenter.org, through our Facebook page, and on YouTube. Thank you for watching Books in the World.